Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the invisible machinery that's quietly tracking almost your every move. From the literal passwords you're typing right now to the insanely detailed psychological profiles being built about you in the shadows, your digital footprint isn't entirely yours anymore. So we're going to pull back the curtain and show you exactly how this hidden ecosystem operates. Let's get right into it.
19%. Think about that for a second. In just the last year alone, nearly 1 in 5 organizations globally fell victim to social engineering. And the crazy thing? It almost always starts by exploiting the smallest, seemingly insignificant pieces of our data.
Which brings us to Section 1, the digital breadcrumb trail.
You know, hackers aren't just sitting there painstakingly guessing your passwords one by one anymore. No way. They use something called credential stuffing. Automated bots take massive combo lists of leaked credentials bought on the dark web, and they just test them across hundreds, even thousands of websites simultaneously. Basically, they're using your own valid, stolen data against you.
And here's how incredibly fast a minor issue snowballs. Let's say some completely unrelated third-party platform gets hacked. Your credentials end up sold on the dark web. Then, those automated bots we just talked about sweep up that data and test it across all your other accounts. If you reuse passwords, and let's be honest, a lot of us do, they're in. They bypass your multi-factor authentication, escalate their access, and exfiltrate your private data. Just like that, a minor breach at some random app you barely use turns into full-blown identity theft.
Now, let's zoom out a bit for Section 2, passwords to full profiles. There's a really fascinating and honestly kind of unsettling contrast here. On one side, you have malicious hackers using stolen credentials to illegally impersonate you. But on the other side, you've got legitimate multi-billion-dollar data brokers using web scraping, cookies, and hidden app software to legally harvest your identity profile. They're compiling an incredibly intimate level of knowledge about you, completely out in the open, and entirely within the bounds of the law.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 3, the power of inference.
We all kind of like to think our anonymous data is safe, right? Well, computational social science completely shatters that illusion. For example, just 4 random spatiotemporal location points over time, that uniquely identifies 95% of individuals. Just knowing 4 apps installed on your smartphone yields the exact same accuracy. Even completely mundane anonymous movie ratings can literally be mapped back to reveal your exact identity and your political preferences. It's like a giant puzzle, and they only need a few pieces.
And these inferences get deeply, deeply personal by feeding innocent, everyday metadata into machine learning algorithms, stuff like the frequency of your phone calls or just how you tap your screen. Brokers can deduce incredibly sensitive traits. We're talking about predicting hidden alcoholism, recent relationship breakups, untreated depression or psychiatric problems, and highly specific demographic typecasting. You never filled out a form volunteering this sensitive health or emotional data, but your digital exhaust, it told them anyway.
Let's look at the bigger picture in Section 4, inside surveillance capitalism.
This entire ecosystem is funded by surveillance capitalism. It's an economic system completely dominated by what they call markets for future behavior. Your data is bought, repackaged, and sold specifically to predict and ultimately influence what you'll do next. Whether we realize it or not, our daily web surfing is essentially unconscious, unpaid labor. We are the highly lucrative commodities for these internet companies.
To really put that into perspective, look at the sheer scale of this operation. 30,000. That is the number of unique attributes that massive data brokers like Oracle claim to hold on over 2 billion people worldwide. 2 billion! Imagine a single database with 30,000 separate data points dedicated entirely to describing your habits, your finances, your health, and your vulnerabilities.
And because this data broker industry is massively underregulated, it creates these immense systemic risks that go way beyond just losing your privacy. Algorithmic errors can lead to active discrimination like wrongful credit typecasting, plus massive data sets pose serious national security threats when they're purchased by state actors. And if the heat turns up, brokers can easily just relocate to data havens to avoid oversight entirely. It is a complex global web of vulnerability.
So, what are governments actually doing about it? Section 5, the policy vacuum.
Right now, the global regulatory landscape is deeply fractured. The U.S. mostly relies on this patchwork of fragmented bills and privacy self-management, which places an impossible burden on consumers to manually opt out of everything. The EU takes the total opposite approach with the GDPR. They impose strict ex-ante rules, meaning they limit data collection from the very start and grant ex-post rights, like the right to erasure. But honestly, even with the threat of heavy GDPR fines, enforcement is a massive challenge globally, simply because these data flows are so incredibly opaque.
Furthermore, analysts point out a really serious economic flaw driving this entire industry: rent-seeking behavior. In economic theory, rent-seeking basically means a company makes massive profits by harvesting a free resource, in this case, your public data, without actually creating new wealth or adding tangible value to the broader economy. It's essentially a massive, perfectly legal transfer of wealth from the public straight into the pockets of a few invisible data intermediaries.
Because of this structural imbalance, legal scholars are urging a really profound shift in how we think. We need to view privacy as an aggregate public good. We literally have to stop viewing privacy as just an individual toggle switch on our smartphones. We need to recognize it as a relational necessity for all society. Because when one person's data is exposed, it feeds the algorithms that profile their friends, their family, and their entire demographic. Protecting data is a collective, systemic defense.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 6, Reclaiming Our Digital Future.
To lock the front door against hackers, the baseline individual defenses are absolutely non-negotiable. We have got to enforce strict password hygiene, mandate multi-factor authentication, and on the enterprise side, utilize just-in-time access controls and implement conditional access policies.
And this brilliantly illustrates the macro approach required for the broader system. Fixing things at a high level requires holistic policies to regulate these data brokers. That means establishing clear legal definitions, enforcing privacy by design directly into our tech, and creating an international oversight authority to actually audit these complex data systems globally. Some economists have even floated the idea of a progressive tax on digital advertising revenue. The goal there? Disrupting the fundamental financial incentives that make mass data collection so wildly profitable in the first place.
Well, we've covered a ton of crucial ground in this explainer today, from cybercriminals stuffing stolen passwords to legal brokers quietly mapping out your emotional state. As we all navigate this increasingly tracked digital landscape, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. In a world of infinite data replication, where your life is constantly being packaged, analyzed, and treated in the shadows, who really owns your digital footprint? Thank you so much for learning with me today, and keep asking the tough questions.